Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and today we're talking about cardinals, about some of their characteristics, how you can tell males and females and juveniles apart, what kind of things they eat, what kind of feeders they'll come to, and some of their really interesting different color morphs that you can find, one of which has been seen kind of in the area. So we've got all that going on today. As always, if you are on, you can say hi in the comments. If you have any questions, you can throw those in there too. And we always like to know what kind of things you're seeing out at your feeders or when you're out hiking. You can throw those in the comments also, but we will get started. So today we are talking about a lot of people's favorite bird, the cardinal. So just some facts to get started about cardinals are they were named after the red robes of the Roman Catholic cardinals. And they are the state bird of many different states, actually: Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia. The cardinal is the state bird of all of those states. Not New York. Ours is the bluebird. But many states do have the cardinal as their state bird. And many people associate them with spiritual messengers, that if you see a cardinal, it's a sign of a visitor who has since passed. So a lot of people hold cardinals near and dear to their hearts. So as far as cardinals go, as far as their classification goes, they are in, when you're doing their classification as far as the order of how they are, how their family kind of plays out, they are in the order Passeriformes, which is all of our songbirds, our songbirds we're used to seeing around here. They're in a family called Cardinalidae, which is the cardinals, some grosbeaks, tanagers. Their genus is Cardinalis, and their species is Cardinalis. So they are closely related to grosbeaks and tanagers, like this rose-breasted grosbeak here, that you probably will find coming to your feeders in the spring, usually late April to early May. They start rolling in, coming to the same kind of feeders that your cardinals will come to. Some of their closely related relatives that are in the genus Cardinalis are going to be the vermilion cardinal and the Pyrrhuxia, which the Pyrrhuxia can be found in the continental U.S. The vermilion cardinal, not so much. That's more in Colombia and Venezuela. You may have heard of other cardinal species, and they are in a different family than our northern cardinal that we have here. So they are not as closely related to our northern cardinal, but there are some other South American species that look a lot like cardinals and are pretty closely related to them, like this red-crested cardinal and the yellow cardinal. So there's a lot of different cardinal species out there, but today we're talking about the cardinal that we have here, called the northern cardinal. And as far as their characteristics go, they're about 8 or 9 inches in length, so they're slightly smaller than a robin. They have a wingspan of anywhere between 10 and 12 inches. They don't weigh much, so we talk about how birds can use squirrel-proof feeders because they're so light. They are mostly feathers. Their bones are all hollow, so they only weigh about 1.6. And they're sexually dimorphic, meaning the males and females look different from each other. So the male is our real characteristic bird that a lot of people resonate with. It's bright red. They have that distinct black mask. They have a pointed red crest that they can raise and lower, so you might see them doing that sometimes. They can raise and lower those feathers. It's a good way for them to communicate with each other. And they do have a nice, big, large red bill that they use to crack open all kinds of different seeds. So that is your male cardinal. The female cardinal also has a black mask and that large red bill, but she's going to be more of a dull gray or brown color with reddish wings and a reddish tail and a red tip on the crest on top of her head as well. So that is the female cardinal. So they do look quite a bit different. Of course, the females tend to be less colorful. That gives them some camouflage for when they're sitting on their nest. So the juveniles, though, do look quite a bit like the females. So depending on the time of the year, it can be hard to tell the difference between juveniles and cardinals, and female cardinals, when those juveniles are out of the nest. But if you look at the juvenile, they tend to have a shorter crest, or it's not as full. And they're going to be more of a gray or blackish bill color. So the female has that bright reddish orangish bill, but the juveniles will not have that. So their bill is going to be, gray or black or brown. So that's the best way you can identify them. The juveniles, you can tell them apart from the females. As far as the diet goes of cardinals, they eat lots of seeds. So if you have any kind of sunflower seed feeder out there in your backyard, you've probably seen cardinals coming to your backyard. So they love safflower, black oil sunflower, striped sunflower. They also eat insects when insects are plentiful, which we are not in that season currently, but that'll be in a few months. They will definitely eat a lot of insects. They eat fruit. And they mainly feed on the ground. So a lot of people ask, how come cardinals aren't coming to my feeders? I got all these really nice feeders for them, but they are just feeding on the ground. That's kind of their characteristic. That's what they just tend to do anyway. That is what they just, that's their characteristic there, that they just feed on the ground, kind of like your dark-eyed juncos that are probably at your feeders right now, that tend to just feed on the ground as far as higher up in the trees. As far as feeders go for cardinals, the best way to attract them is to get something with a lot of perching room. So that could be a tube feeder like on the left here. This is a tube feeder with large rounded perches that the cardinals can easily fit on. If you have a feeder that just has small kind of stick perches, like just little kind of rods that stick out of it, that can be too small for the cardinals to fit on. So getting a feeder that does have large perches on it is ideal. Or you can get something like this other feeder here on the right. It's called a fly-through feeder. It's like a platform feeder that the cardinals can just fly through, and it gives them a lot of perching room. Tray feeders, something like this, are great for the cardinals. Those give them plenty of perching room, or hopper feeders, which are those feeders that kind of look like houses that hold a lot of seed. Those are all great for cardinals as well. So the key to getting cardinals is perching room. As far as the cardinal range and habitat goes, cardinals don't migrate. They have adapted well to urban and suburban environments, and they were originally a southern bird, but over the past 150 years or so, their population has dramatically increased. So it used to be a bird that we didn't even have here in New York, but their population has been increasing and continues to do so, actually. And this is from this photo here is from the Audubon site, where it shows increases and decreases in different populations of birds. And this is the cardinal range and habitat range. So you can see, for the most part, it's maintained or gained its range, and continues to do so. So it's continuing to stretch forward, and a lot of it has to do with their ability to really adapt well to urban and suburban environments. So as sprawl continues, that is good habitat as far as cardinals go. Cardinals do have different types of songs, and as we go along in the season, you'll start to hear them calling. You might start hearing them call right now. The adults start to sing in March and April, and that is when they will start to establish territories and search for mates. Males with more song types tend to attract more females. That goes with other birds as well, like mockingbirds. So each individual can have 10 to 12 different song types, and they'll sing not only through the breeding season, but they'll sing well into August. And what allows them to sing so well, as far as not just cardinals, but other songbirds, they have a well-developed voice box that enables them to do that. So here's some cardinal songs here. Got some video of a cardinal singing. So this is your typical cardinal song that you're probably used to hearing in your backyard. Here is another cardinal song here. And not only do the male cardinals sing, but females also sing, which is pretty rare for songbirds. Usually the females don't sing, at least here in North America. In South America, it's reversed. But the female cardinals do sing here, and they'll also often sing while they're sitting on their nest. And they might sing even longer and more complex songs than the males do. So females and male cardinals do both sing. And they start to sing kind of early in the season. So right now you might start to hear cardinals starting to sing in January and February. Adults will sing what are called subsongs. So it's like little sections or little portions of their normal song. They'll start to sing. As far as that goes, it's a way for them to practice, so they can get that song down before breeding season. And the young will really start, the younger cardinals will start singing early. And there are different dialects also. So this is true not only with cardinals, but with other birds as well, that there are what are called dialects. So if you were to go into the South, for example, a cardinal might sound different than it does here. So here is a video of a cardinal. I believe this is one from Texas. This is what it sounds like. So you can hear that it still has that same kind of voice and tone of a cardinal, but it does sound a little bit different. So this is more of a Southern dialect. So you can hear that slight difference there in their call. They still have that same kind of tone. You know it's a cardinal, but it does sound a little bit different than the ones that we have up here. Cardinals also have what are called chip calls. And this is probably what you hear if you go outside to fill your feeders and there's cardinals out there. It's an alarm call. It is a way for them to say, hey, get out of here, or there's something wrong. Chickadees have alarm calls as well that you're probably used to hearing, but these are going to be their non-musical, kind of a metallic sounding note. And this is what a chip call sounds like. And you can see it's flicking its tail too. That's another sign that there's something wrong. It's one way for them to communicate that there might be some danger around here as well. So cardinals can be very territorial. Their territories are usually about 2 to 3 acres in size. They're well known to attack their own reflection. So here's a photo of a cardinal going after a rear view mirror. They're well known to especially go after windows. Once we get into the breeding season, we'll start to get all these phone calls, always on the same day at the store. All of a sudden, the phone will be ringing off the hook that there are cardinals attacking their windows. And so what they're doing is they see their reflection and they think that that's another cardinal in their territory, and they're going after their reflection. So we do have some things to keep them from doing that. We've got some things that'll break up reflections if you do have cardinals that start attacking your windows come spring, because they will do it for usually several days at a time. They will ultimately stop, but it can be, quite a few long days there if you've got a cardinal that just is going after your windows. So this happens in spring and in early summer, and they're trying to defend their territory against intruders. But as their hormones subside, the attacks do as well. So right now, though, when they're not experiencing a lot of territoriality, cardinals will form mixed flocks. So just the other day on our broadcast, somebody reported they had a big flock of, I think, like 15 cardinals. So you can still see that kind of a thing right now. They're not super territorial yet, so you can find these big flocks in the wintertime. And during the mating season, males and females will form strong bonds, and you can often see this behavior here where the male will feed the female. It's something called allo feeding, or giving them a nuptial gift. It's one way for the males to increase that pair bond with the female. So the males will feed the female, either insects or seeds from your bird feeders. So that's always fun to see. So males and females will form those strong bonds, and they'll stay together all year. And studies have shown, though, that between 9 and 35% of the young that result in successful breeding are from a female mating with another male that is not her quote unquote mate. And this is pretty common in the bird world in general. So the male and female do mate with other birds as well as their as well as the one that they are bonded with. As far as nesting goes, the nest is about 4 to 5 inches in diameter and 2.5 to 3.5 inches tall. It's usually about 4 to 8 feet above the ground, but they've been found as high as 40 feet up high off the ground. They're known to nest in at least 50 different types of trees and shrubs, another reason why they are doing so well and their populations are increasing. The predation rates seem to be the same no matter where they nest, if they nest low or high in the trees. And it doesn't seem to matter if they nest in a really concealed place or more out in the open. The predation rate seems to be the same. And studies have shown that cardinal nest success rates are better in suburban areas compared to rural and wilderness areas. So they do really, really well in rural and suburban, or they do really, really well in rural and suburban areas. So another reason why their range is increasing. They nest in protected, concealed places in general. So places you can find them nesting are forest edges, shrubs, clumps of vegetation. The female chooses the spot, and the male might bring in some nesting material, but the female does do the nest building. And the more experienced the female is, the stronger the nest is, and that's pretty common for birds. The older the female is and more experienced, the more nesting success that they have. As far as what they use to build their nest, they'll use plant stems, grapevine bark. They will line it with small grasses and dried leaves, and it usually takes 3 to 6 days to complete that whole nest building process. They will have anywhere between 1 and 3 broods per season, and they have more broods with fewer eggs in the south. So down south, you might find them having, more like 3 broods, and up here, more like 1. On average, each nest will have 3 to 4 eggs, and those eggs will be sat on for 12 to 13 days. That's their incubation time. And it takes about 9 to 10 days until those fledglings will leave the nest. And the male will bring food to the chicks, and the female, while she's sitting on those eggs and while she's helping to raise the young, the male will also stay and feed the fledglings while the female goes to build her second nest. So if they're going to have a second brood, the male will stick around, feed those young while the female goes to start her nest building again. And this is a fledgling as it's leaving the nest, so they're not the most gorgeous thing. But you can see they do have that big bill. It's lacking its crest, but starting to get some of those reddish feathers. So this is a cardinal fledgling just leaving the nest. Most cardinals live to about 5 or 6 years old, but the oldest recorded cardinal was a female who was 15 years and 9 months old at least. So they have kind of a variation there. As far as feathers go, they're always going to be this bright red. Once they get their adult plumage, they will molt that, but it keeps on being red, so they don't have multiple plumages like goldfinches, for example, who will molt their bright gold plumage, and they'll be more of a dull kind of a dull yellow, dull olive color right now. So males are targeted over females more as far as predation goes because they are so bright. And they are bright red due to the pigments in the foods that they eat. So that bright red coloration is from some of those bright red berries that they eat. And they are pretty well known to molt all their feathers on their head at once. Blue jays do this as well sometimes. So if you happen to see a completely bald cardinal, it looks really bizarre, but it's not completely uncommon. They will do that, and after a week or 10 days or so, they should be back in business with their feathers just like normal. But it can look quite strange to have a bald bird at your bird feeders. So if that happens, snap a photo, because it's not the most common thing, but it's also not rare. And then there are color morphs. Like right now, there is a yellow cardinal just like this that has been seen out in Syracuse. So a few years ago, this yellow cardinal here was making the news. This was one that was seen in Alabama, and I've got a video of it here. But there are different color morphs that cardinals can experience. This yellow morph is pretty rare, and it's due to their pigmentation. They've got an issue with their pigmentation. Basically, instead of the berries that they're eating causing them to be bright red, it causes them to be yellow. So there's just some kind of an issue they're having with their pigmentation there. There's nothing wrong with the bird, but they just are not able to express their color in that bright red. They are more of a yellow color. So keep your eyes out at your feeders. You never know what you might see. And there is one that's been pretty local in the Syracuse area coming to a feeder that has this yellow, experiencing this yellow morph here. And then there's other things as far as the color morphs go. I was having a cardinal in my backyard, a female that had white patches all over her. We'll see a picture of that coming up. But here's something that's pretty interesting as well. This is a bird that is experiencing something that's called bilateral gynandromorphism. And that's a rare abnormality that causes the bird to have female plumage on one side and male plumage on another side. So this is super rare, but this bird was discovered at a banding station in November of 2019 in Texas. So really rare, very interesting color morph there. What you're most likely to see as far as color morphs go are birds with patches that are lacking pigmentation, not just cardinals, but other birds as well, mammals, any kind of animal you could see have this kind of a color morph. This is called being leucistic. So there's just white patches. The bird is lacking color pigments in some of its feathers. This is a photo that was taken in Henrietta in 2020 in January, so about 3 years ago. But this is more common. So you'll see this is something called leucism, and it's when they're just lacking some pigments in their feathers or in their fur if it's a mammal. So if you have any questions, you can throw those in the comments, or if you want to report any of your sightings, you can throw those in there as well. Dina is on and she says, thank you, Dina, for tuning in. Stephanie says, I'm still getting large flocks of cardinals daily. They used to just come at dusk and dawn, but now seem to stay all day. It's getting a bit contentious as the starling population is beginning to boom here. Yes, I have many starlings and few cardinals, so I understand, but that's great. You're still getting groups of cardinals. Ed says, great presentation. Thank you, Ed. Always learn something new on the Birdhouse broadcast. Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. And we are making our calendar up for 2023, and we hope to bring you lots of fun and different and new programming. So we're working on that. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back on Saturday with another broadcast. But until then, have a great week, and we'll talk.